Let's see if that does anything. I'm waiting for the streams to catch up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Twitch is here. Looks good. It's a little
Right.
delayed. Very delayed. All right, well. Oh. Keeps DCing for Twitch.
Better reason to go hang out on YouTube right now. Go over to the
Yeah.
YouTube. 5.5 Unearthed Arcana. What is? Oh yeah, wasn't that
It's the
there's the new class,
Scion.
Scion, which
Yeah.
you know, I at least like it in the aspect of it feels like the new designers at Wizard of the Coast are trying. And that's
Yeah.
better than what we've had before. I say we like I play D&D.
Right.
But it like I from what I've heard of them talk about, it's the craziest fact that it seems like they're too scared to design shit. That it seems like they're having more confidence to design a new mechanic. Granted,
Yeah,
it's
which
just, you know,
that
new
reminds me.
spellcasting.
That reminds me of the craziest thing of Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins joining Daredevil Press, which is
Did that happen?
yeah, no, really,
I
you didn't
didn't
know.
see this.
Yeah, no. Daredevil Press, which if you guys don't know, is the company that works. It's Critical Role's company, more or less. They hired on Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford to work for them, which I saw that and I was like, I don't know how I feel about this.
I was about to say I don't like being a hater. That's not true. I do enjoy it to an extent.
Hello,
But
Sam.
man, I don't want to shit on either of them because I think they seem like pretty decent folk. It's
Yeah.
the problem where every single time I hear them talk about the game, they say some dumb bullshit that makes me think they're stupid. So
Yeah.
like that's my problem. Where I'm in the two worlds. And like I hope the reason for all of this was them having to talk good about a company that's stifling them because you cannot disparage your company while you're, you know, in the middle of it. I hope that's the reason. I hope getting a new company and working on new stuff maybe sparks that creative juice again, gets them back into it. But if they're gonna keep up their idea of, you know, more classes and basically more content is a bad thing, I think it's not gonna do great. I'm a little worried.
Oh, did my stream end on YouTube? This new stuff is going
It I did have to reload it because it was like stream ended to
on.
watch.
Yeah. Okay, it seems to be there.
Yeah,
And then
seems
Twitch is
okay.
struggling again.
It might be an actual just Twitch thing.
No, because I'm getting frame drops on my end as far as what the metrics are saying. It's probably just a local internet thing. It does seem to be better on YouTube though. So
that's something.
yeah, it's something. It does seem like it's getting better. The percentage of frame drops is going down. So as time goes on, less frames are dropping. But yeah, so I guess I'll just continue. Who cares? This will all be on YouTube, I guess. It's one of two things, right? Either one, Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins were bad at designing D&D because they were forced to. Or two, they just don't their version of what TTRPG should or should not be don't really align well with my own. And them moving to Darrington Press is concerning. So
Yeah.
I don't know. They both seem like avid tabletop enjoyers. I mean, especially, you know, Chris Perkins for sure. And it's interesting. And we kind of went over on the topic of the stream, but this is related to it. Yeah, Also, like, in general, and the reason why I kind of have this general thought on what people like as far as like tabletop is concerned is a variety of D&D content creators, which, to be fair, I can't speak on all of them because I don't watch all of them, just a handful, and only occasionally. But a good number of them, from the videos I do watch every here and there, have them just talking about other games that they're playing. You know, they're playing some other game in some form or fashion. A lot of Pathfinder players, but some other games as well. And their videos are just less orientated around D&D specifically, and more just like using D&D as just an algorithm bait to help their videos succeed. Because this is kind of the terrible thing about how tabletop has evolved as like a YouTube topic is D&D was big, so people made content on D&D and they made money, and now D&D not big, and all those people making money exclusively on D&D too afraid to do anything else because everything else way underperformed, are now not even getting the money that they were getting from D&D as much anymore. So
Yeah.
there's a variety of content creators that have just like their channels just have died for the most part. Like they just don't make the content anymore because D&D just doesn't sell like it used to on the platform. And for other kinds of content, it's been better. There's a lot more people interested in more variety, especially around Pathfinder specifically, but it's not like it's anywhere near what D&D content creators were kind of like aiming for before. And Daggerheart has been a big topic, and that's probably why Daggerheart has been doing so well on Google Trends, is just because everyone's grasping for like something in the TTRPG space. Because,
and that's the thing to grasp for, because like
yeah.
I mean, you can add Critical Role to the metadata,
Yeah.
so you're gonna get a nice boost from that. It's just that's the cheat code for tabletop content. Add in D&D, Critical Role, and Matthew Mercer.
Yeah, because let's see here. If I type in, I did this last time. Let's see who else is a big D&D content creator? I don't know, to be honest. If I just type in
Literally,
D&D.
yeah, just do that.
Let's see. D&D Shorts seems to be a channel that's doing particularly well. 527,000 subs. So overall doing good. Talked about Daggerheart recently. Talked about Artificer's changes in 2025 or 2024. Yeah, a lot of videos, no real long, like not really talking about D&D the game, but more about stuff around D&D. Like most recent video was the original rules for women in D&D are wild. That's like a history piece. Daggerheart, and then talking about the Artificer, which is, I would say, more relevant. But then the new class, that's new UA stuff. We have a build video that has done terribly by their normal metrics. And then the Dark Sun book, which is more of a history piece again. And then I'm sorry we can't keep going like this. I don't know what that video is about. Probably talking about how prior types of content aren't working anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's kind of like it's definitely more of a general shift from pure D&D content. And let's see, what's another one? Legend of Adventurous just sells based on being Legends of Adventurous, so they're not worth. They're not a part of this discussion.
You know, I do find it funny. I just checked the video tags for XP to level 3's recent Daggerheart video.
Critical
And
Role
they're
in there.
all no, it's all D&D related.
Oh,
It's every D&D
Yep.
class, just Dungeons and Dragons all the time.
Yep.
I don't like that. That makes sense. And also, as someone who also does this, I would not be surprised if they are like copied over from a different video just endlessly. But
They are
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, for sure. But like, I find it interesting. 'Cause I have my like very big bulk tags that I always copy from, and then I add in just a couple extra for more views.
Yeah. I do some similar stuff. I have I have like a set amount, and then I always type in new ones like for the new class or whatever.
Yeah, like I do the same, and it's always subject dependent too. So I just jumping from subject to subject, game to game. But it makes sense. And yeah, actually, I should also look up D&D because I'm curious who's out here making videos.
Yeah, that's honestly, it's because one, yeah, I don't do D&D, so of course. Dungeon Craft has been a big one, relatively speaking, but Dungeon Craft has been kind of on a big doomer spree for a while now. That hasn't really changed, and that's just kind of meta stuff. Did talk about Daggerheart, but everyone else is. God, yeah,
Oh
who
yeah, the
else?
only other one I know is Ginny D.
Yeah,
Like,
the Ginny
from what
D.
I've seen, she's good. Not
Yeah,
my type of content, but
yeah. Well, it's just very
uh,
casual content, is the
not
thing.
even like casual stuff. Like it's a lot of like hacks and like tips to play. And I'm like, I can just play the game. I'm fine.
Well, yeah,
This ain't
but
for me.
that's what I mean by casual content. It's just it's content for people who just are casually looking into the game and want to
Yeah.
play it or thinking about it. Uh, yeah, it's just a lot of that. It's just a lot of like basic tabletop stuff. She made a Daggerheart video. A lot of
Only
her
other
stuff
one I
is just
see a lot.
general tabletop stuff, not even necessarily talking about Dungeons and Dragons.
The only other ones I see a lot is basically just D&D skits, which
Yeah.
can be extracted out to general tabletop skits, but it's just Zach the Bold. I mean, I've seen a couple of his stuff. Those are fun.
Yeah, it's hard because I do remember a time in recent years that D&D content creators were actually making D&D related like game content.
Yeah. And like even then it was there's D&D content for it. It also then extended out to like stories of them playing the game.
Yeah.
And like a lot of it was, you know, still explicitly D&D.
Oh, yes, and also Pointy Hat talking about the UA, talked about Daggerheart. And then it's just basic D&D stuff that like I'm surprised they haven't talked about before, like how to play actual dragons in Dungeons and Dragons. It's just, I don't know. And to be fair, right, I'm not expecting the D&D content field to be specifically about the game, the meta, the this, that, or whatever, you know. But I do expect them to be talking about the game at all, really, like in general, speaking on, not just like basic role-playing tips that can mostly be applied to most other games. It does seem like a lot of the channels are kind of struggling.
Yeah, like
No lie.
I also have to double check for my favorite genre of D&D video, the D&D slop video. How are they doing over here? Ah, okay. These seem to be doing better. You know, classic oh shit, this just got worse.
Yeah. Which is funny because I watched a video from Bob World Builder the other day, and he was saying how D&D videos are becoming less negative as time has been going on. And I don't agree. I think people are just making less videos. less D&D like anger videos in general, because there's just less controversies, because it's hard to have controversies when D&D doesn't put anything out.
Yeah. Like the only thing I can see other than that is like unless our feeds are somehow so like just not showing us D&D videos. But I feel like if you look something up, you should find it. You should find people covering all the hot new stuff.
And actually, I'm gonna do something crazy. I'm gonna do something wild. I'm gonna look up D&D wizard.
Oh.
Or no,
Yeah, oh yeah, new class.
not a new class, but
Maybe Arcanist because it's dropping.
well, I'm doing this. Well, no. Well, what I'm doing is in Pathfinder. Whenever you look up a class, the first few videos you always see or notice around is people telling you how the class works, what it does, the game stuff, right? That's definitely. Oh, there is a wizard guide here. But most of these are more of just like best subclasses, which is close, or the problem with wizards, or creating your wizard, which is just a very, very basic, like, here's how you make a wizard character sheet video, or 5 tricks all good wizards in D&D know. Like, that's the difference between D&D and I think other tabletop games, and I don't think it's new, is it's something where it's hard to talk about the game because nothing has changed in like 10 plus years. Yeah, personally, D&D YouTube is a thrive. WotC needs to make a new edition. True. They're not going to, but true.
Like, unless shit goes very, very different. Like, the only way I can see it is if Hasbro kind of steps back from it. If it pulls what recently happened with White Wolf. Because I think White Wolf had a lot of stuff also hit with Paradox being their owner now. Because I know that happened, is they got in some slight online controversy. I think a little undeserved to an extent. Like, it's basically what they always did throughout their entire game history. Writing stuff with like real history and current events happening with supernatural elements. It went viral on Twitter, and then they kind of got clamped down on of like, you're not allowed to write without our approval. And that's why basically nothing has come out for World of Darkness except like the recent Werewolf book. So they got their independence back as a company. So maybe we'll see that. If that happens to Wizards of the Coast, I think we might see new shit.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want them to have a new game. I just want brush off the dust of the old and welcome in the new. I don't know.
I want to see the next D&D. Like, what is it that D&D like fans that now work on this game? What is the thing they cook? Right. I think that's the fun of tabletop history. I like the stepping stone history you see of like design.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, especially we're seeing a lot more innovative designs with new games like Daggerheart. That is definitely taking a more crunchier narrative approach. I like a lot of the things they do in that game. I think is very interesting. Cosmere, from when we beta tested for it, was pretty fun. I really liked a lot of the really mechanics in it. Yeah. There's a lot of potential going on in the TTRPG field right now, and I feel like things are kind of at a lull, right? And what will bring people back is sensationalism around something new, and whether that's Daggerheart, whether Daggerheart cooks around a bit and people start really like picking it up, and more people start like getting into it and making content on it, or whether that's another game like Pathfinder has a really strong chance of some content creators coming in and being like, hey, we're playing some Pathfinder, here we go, and getting a bunch of people interested in it, because that's the number one thing. Something doesn't even have to be good to become the thing, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh crap, Lethal Company. There you go. Lethal Company is really not that fun of a game. It's a silly game. It's not that fun of a game, but it blew up and everyone was playing it. I feel like the repo game is more fun mechanically
Agreed.
and game playing in general. But like Lethal Company, when it came out, not that great of a game, to be honest, but it got huge and a bunch of people are talking about it. Yeah, XP level 3 is doing a lot of Pathfinder content, which is great. And you know, he may be the herald to bring in the new crowd to Pathfinder at this rate. If he really like double downs. Well, D&D 5 is also not that great of a game, so well, yeah, but that proves my point, right? It just, you just need someone to light the flame, right? And then everyone will get into it. Like you create that gamer envy suddenly. Yeah, Joe K is also working on some stuff as well.
You know, I was just reminded when just going over this idea. You know, there's a new I love the Twitter term that popped up around this of friend slop. It's the game Peak, the co-op like climbing
Oh,
game.
yeah.
That looks like it'd be fun. I think we'd have a good time with that.
Yeah. So, you know, it's so unfortunate, but it's just, we need good content creators sitting and playing and making content about tabletop games to get people interested. And like, I wish I had that power. I wish I could just talk about games and people get interested in it. But not only have I not been making content, but my channel was not that big in the first place. You know, I would one day love to be able to sway people to try new games. I think that'd be really good. But, you know, I can't. So all I can do is hope that someone with more general recognition goes and makes content, because like, I gotta say, Jacob Buds, who's the guy who's behind XP to level 3, has been doing phenomenally as a variety tabletop content creator. Like, yes, does he still do D&D stuff? Of course. It just pulls views in generally better for him, but he made a Pathfinder video recently that did pretty good. His Pathfinder spells video did really good. Actually, is one of his better performing videos, along with how it feels to play Pathfinder video. Like, if you look at his content and what he generally does and how many views he generally pulls in compared to literally anyone else in the D&D field, he does the numbers. He does really good. I feel like, and I think it's something he's working on, if Jacob wants Pathfinder to do well, he can make it happen. And that's just the world we live in. And you know what? Honestly, I'm not too upset about that. I think Jacob's pretty good. I think he's pretty interesting. I've enjoyed his content for a bit, and I like his overall approach, which is just, you know, he's not very in about the rules, but he loves how the rules work, you know, and it really shows through in a lot of his content. So,
yeah, I like his vibe on it. I think he's does it well. If I could only watch one like a D&D YouTuber, it would be him. I am not as into I guess skit based content.
Yeah.
Like as we've gone on, but I like his perspective on stuff. I think he's good at expressing his opinion and explaining why he thinks that way. I might not always agree with him, but I think a good communicator is someone who is able to explain why they think the way they do without coming across like a dickhead.
Well, Jacob is just like you, but more ADHD. I'll take that as a compliment. I think he's a fun guy. I honestly do.
He's a fun guy. I feel like he'd be very fun to talk to, just like in general. He's got a great personality for it. Like, that's why he's done so well for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And like, It's the part that I'm curious if that's a thing he wants to do, uh, like pivot harder on it, because it just seems like he makes videos based on what he finds interesting and fun. So like he has an interest in Pathfinder, he'll make videos when he's interested,
Well, and like
rather than like a full pivot.
for sure, he keeps talking about Pathfinder, even in non-Pathfinder videos. He keeps bringing in Pathfinder, so it's wild to think that in the handful of videos that he's made on Pathfinder, he's probably pulled in more overall views than all the Pathfinder community together.
It is just nice that someone jumped over and they're like being cool about making the videos. Mm-hmm. Like it's nice that we can talk about this without being like, yeah, and it was also like weird and disparaging. Like the takes were really weird.
Yeah, like freaking Mr. X. Oh,
yeah,
that made me so irritated. And Puppet Force, who's been mostly positive, but some of his takes on the game have also been just super wildly out of character or like misrepresentative of what the game is actually like.
Like the most it could be, because like that first video and then him touching back on it is like, this feels like the starter positions you kind of have being super into D&D and then trying Pathfinder or knowing Pathfinder. Because I had the same idea of like, oh yeah, Pathfinder's that game. It's really, really complicated. There's a lot of math. Then you actually do it and you're like, oh, this isn't as crazy as I thought it would be. Like, this is reasonable. It just felt like it was like a not crazy informed take. And that then turned into like, okay, I enjoy it. Like, all right, fair enough. I'll take that. I'll take the growth.
Yeah. Also, cool, Solric. Sounds like an interesting character. So, you know, that's the thing, right? Tabletop has always needed good content creators behind it. And what really is unfortunate is we were doing really, really good in the era around Arcadum before the fall. Once Arcadum fell, that was devastating. And having a less vague rule set makes for a better game. I mean, that's completely subjective, right? Some people prefer to just have a silly time, right? Like, if anyone here's watched Legends of Advantris, they don't really need a strong structured game to have fun with what they're doing.
I don't think I've seen them do a combat. I'll be
apparently
honest.
They have, because I saw a couple clips. It's very rare, and it's more just silly. So, you know, it's based on what an individual group wants. But
and it's the thing that I've also talked to people about, because like I brought it up, I think last time we did this, of I've just discussed that idea with people where I'm like, I like Pathfinder because of the rules, and they're like, well, I don't like the rules. I want to have a more lax time and not have to worry about it. Like, all right, that's an extreme preference difference.
Mm-hmm. Gotta have crunch like peanut butter. I hate crunchy peanut butter.
I do too. I hate crunchy.
I'm gonna say that live. I hate crunchy peanut butter. But I do like crunch in my games.
Exactly.
Yeah, the problem with D&D is it was not trying to be a rules-like game. It wasn't designed to be a rules-like game. It was a crunchier game that just did not have a lot of supporting like rule sets to make it work, you know?
It is a game that is trying to be a lot more tactical in how it's set up, but the problem is there's just a lot of inherent flaws that make it not tactical. Like the fact of you plant your feet in combat and then you don't move ever, or everything just kind of ping pongs up and down from down to healthy. It's just, it has like basic flaws that hurt. It's the type of shit you can do in its combat.
Yeah, it's wild to me how much of a general, like, it's so hard to describe to people what is actually wrong with D&D 5e. because there's so many things that you can kind of reach around if you're in the right kind of headspace. But like, for instance, right, Rangers in general, they've gotten better, admittedly, but before 2024 and before a lot of like the new rules for them have been added in, they just had features that just mostly were unused for most of a game. And it's like, when they were designing the game, did they give them those features because they thought they would be used, or because they thought that's what Rangers had? And it's the second one. And that's a problem, because they just thought a Ranger should have a thing without considering how it should be used. Or crafting, how there only had rules for you making stuff up to 50 gold pieces worth. And it's like, how many items in the game do players want to make that are 50 gold pieces?
Yeah, not a lot.
Not a lot. And not a lot that they want to make. You could say rope, and I'd say you're fucking insane. Buy rope at a store. And you don't use it that often. And so what D&D is it's a game that has a rough enough structure to get the idea of tabletop across, but not enough support for anyone who wishes to get really any more into it. And that's the tragic part, is they made a game that really got the idea of tabletop across, because so many people grabbed onto it, so many people liked it, and so many people got into tabletop with it. But if you wanted any more out of the game than what was on the base surface, it fell through real fast. So one of the reasons why broken build videos, or how you break the game of D&D, got popular was because, one, people like power gaming. That's just people in general. But two, because it felt like you could actually do something with the game by breaking characters then that way. It felt like you were actually able to make a thing with the game if you took so many things in certain combinations, and people wanted that. They wanted the idea of like, oh, I can make this character finally. I just have to do some janky stuff with the system. And it's sad, because there's just much better games of every type of genre out there. Monopoly is a better tabletop experience and even a better D&D experience than current D&D. I disagree. I know that's cap.
Monopoly is a little rough. It needs, that one needs an update. What if
I agree. Actually, there are some really fun Monopolies out there.
There's one, I think it's Millionaire version, but it's you're buying brands instead of like properties, and you have like a tracker, and once you get above like a certain level in brands, you win. That game is so much better. It's so much faster. There's like more fun things you can do in it, and I think that game is discontinued, not sold anymore.
Yeah,
it's just the best version of Monopoly.
But yeah, it's just like Pathfinder. Pathfinder does really, really well at being a game that you can play endlessly, because there's just so many different things to do. Alex, who's not a person who makes a bunch of characters for every tabletop game, has made a bunch of characters for Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
You know it. It's a great time making them.
I mean, dual heritage can be a rule if you want it to be in your game, but no, I think you just want everything in your game, and that's kind of defeats the purpose of much of the balance they put into the game. The fun of the game is the fact that you have to work with different things with every type of character. That's what I like about the game.
I do too.
I love Alchemist. I think it's so fun. I've never been more engaged with another class as much as I have with the Alchemist. I think it's really, really fun. And I think that there are some interesting ways to make a lot of different types of classes, and there's so many I want to try out. And now we're having 2 new classes coming out here real soon in Battlecry. And I really, really want to play the crap, I can't remember what the class is called. I'm getting it confused with a lot of different similar things. Is it strategist?
Commander?
Is it commander?
Or Pathfinder, right?
It might be commander.
It's commander and
it is commander, okay. Also, Starfinder compatibility means you can pull Pathfinder stuff to Starfinder. True, kind of. We had a discussion about this before. Starfinder's basic rule compatibility is not inherent that the 2 games are actually cross-compatible. They just have similar rule sets. Because Starfinder is a game with guns. Starfinder 2E when? Starfinder 2E comes out end of next month, I believe. End of July. Early August.
Yeah, it's going to be the kind of thing where you can do it, probably. It's going to have some jank. But if that's the game you want to run, you can. It sounds like you can run it. I am still. I think the thing that'd be super fun for Starfinder is I would love to meld that with Lancer, like so hard. I think that'd be the sickest thing ever.
Yeah, I think it would be too. I think it'd be super interesting, and then you would have the second half of Lancer finally, where you can actually play your pilots as characters and actually do stuff with them, rather than just waiting between times to play to get into your suit. Like, sorry to say, orbital dropkick, but I think you're wrong, and I think the pilot rules in general are kind of bad.
It's just big nothing burgers. Like I love Lancer, but it's just, and I love roleplay. I feel like it'd be fun, but you know, having a cool adventure outside of your mech would be cool. I'd like to do that too.
Yeah, I would like my pilot to feel like an actual part of my character sheet, rather than just an augment for whatever mechs I'm going for. 3 Kinesis. Yeah, to be fair, Kinesis are really strong. Kinesis is such a good class. Pilot's life. Yeah, like I just like that's such a thing, right? And like I disagree heavily with orbital dropkick's general idea. Pilots being crunchier than the mechs. I don't want them crunchier than the mechs. I want them to have anything at all. A smidge of rules, please.
I want something a little bit, and it's just gonna make it's just 2 different combat experiences, and I think it makes for a really fun sci-fi world with the idea of the ubiquity of mechs for Lancers, and then what it's doing is kind of making the type of game I would love of letting me play Titanfall in a tabletop game. Like you can do some out of mech stuff in combat with Lancer, but not to the extent that I want.
Calling it a bonds system is a little generous. It's an idea of a game mechanic. Like, it's very basic. It's very linear. It's very vague and does not come with a lot of general structure. Like, you can have, in fact, I've been designing a game that has pretty decent non-combat mechanics that are pretty fun. And Pathfinder even has a lot of mechanics that are very interesting that are not combat related. Like, Orbital Dropkick has gone on to say that they intentionally designed the pilot rules to be as bare minimum as possible so you can just tell a story. And if I wanted to just tell a story, I had to write a book. I want to play a game with story mechanics. You know, I want there to be mechanics to what my character can do that are not combat related. I want to solve puzzles with my pilot. You know, give me a game that has hacking mechanics for my pilot, even though I know mechs can hack too. But like, still, like a game by definition of being a game should be able to engage you in everything that you would like to do in said game. And being unable to do so is a flaw.
I like the fact that at least they're sticking to what they want Lancer to be, of just a designed to be a skirmish type game, and so it makes sense that if your intention, how everything's set out, is like you're leveling up every mission, and you're doing these like big kind of very war gamey combats, then like let's not add too much stuff to bog it down. But then in reality, for how we all play, we're like, well, that's the stuff we want. We want a skirmish, like the mission, to last like 5 sessions. As we role play out stuff, we do a bunch of exploring, which is why I think like, all right, easy fix. Let's meld this with a different sci-fi game that we like. It's just like, yeah, Lancers are at a different scale, and so like maybe it's harder for you to fight another mech as a human. But suddenly you get your big robot, you can like switch between each game.
To be fair, I haven't messed too deeply with the bonds system in Blades, or like anything deeper than like what we did for our one shot, so I can't really speak on that. And I haven't really read through. I don't think I own the Karakin Trade Baronies book, so I guess I would have to look into it to see. Maybe they fixed it, but that should have been core. They just made a half game core and then released another book to fix the other half of the game. Again, I love Lancer. Don't get me wrong. I like the general idea of Lancer. But the pilot stuff is sad, and it makes it hard for me to want to actually run a longer Lancer game, because character development feels like it's only geared towards mechs, which is not what a story is only about. Even Gundam knows this, but I haven't read that in the Karakin Trade Baronies, to be fair. So
there's also the new game that's going to happen with set in the same universe. I'm curious how that's going to be, because it seems pulled back from mech stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's crap, what's it called? I do know what the other game is.
I forgot the name too. I just that's why I'd have to check their Discord.
I can't remember. I have wanted to check it out though. You know what, Darrow? That's very fair. So I'll have to check it out. But as far as what Gundam has mechs, isn't it all politics? Exactly, right? Like I said, I love everything that Lancer does when it's related to mechs. But it's like saying, wow, I like tabletop for more than just combat. You know? So Lancer, while being a great combat game, is kind of just a bad TTRPG elsewhere.
Yeah, I can like respect the fact that they wanted to make a simple like skirmish type game with some of the most satisfying tabletop combat I've had. And like I like it from a lens of being a really sick war game. And I think it'd be one of those situations where like we could play a really good drawn out Lancer game, but like I'd love for the bit of spice of life, the bit of variety that you could add if it had stronger like pilot rules.
I mean, yeah, in general.
Yeah. It'd be fun to be like, all right, we've had so many like these type of combats, can we do something else? And it's why I will, till we eventually do it, why I'm going to harass you to do a Lancer Starfinder game, like mix the two.
Yeah, Yeah, and I think that would be fun. And I think that'd be great. And there'd actually be reasons to do that, you know. And it's back to the subject before this becomes a my gripes with Lancer stream, which is not what I want to make a stream about. Imagine a nanocyte piloting a Baylor. I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool.
There'd be some funny stuff, and then I'm curious if we'd do some adjusting or even make a tiny little rule packet of like interactions in combat between the two parties, like the two types of games.
But Mex, well, you know what? But Mex is correct. Again, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but I do think Lancer has a great opportunity to drag some people in too. Like, I think a lot of people would love something other than just the standard D&D fantasy. I think people still want high fantasy, but maybe something not D&D fantasy, you know?
Because like it's one of those things where like I don't like D&D, but the specific vibe of a D&D campaign is something I really like. Like I really love, as much as I don't think it's the best idea to run multi-year long games. Like if you're gonna have a long game, keep it to a year maybe. But like there's something about we're in a fantasy world, we're playing characters, we're walking town to town, we're like solving these adventures, fighting these bad guys, going into a cave because like a jewel was stolen and here it is. Like there's something about that is super nice. It feels nostalgic in a way. And I love sci-fi. That's like my bread and butter. But I like me that vibe.
Yeah.
And also, I've gotten many people into Lancer. Its appeal is amazing because it has, I think, the best show people things from the game, and they'll be interested because its design is just so interesting and fun. Where you're like, hey, you play D&D, you know what a mech is. Check out this guy. Everyone's gonna like. I've shown it to a lot of D&D fans, and just like. And all I've done, I've scrolled through CompCon, showing them frames and telling them lore, and they're like, I need this game right now.
Yeah.
Like, this looks awesome. And then I tell them, oh, by the way, it plays like roughly like D&D. D20, roll like this. And they're like, oh, easy to learn too? They're super interested.
This might be another jab at Lancer, but I think Lancer would do better as like a board game. Like a board game you can buy at a shop. There's really very little reason you couldn't.
I mean... It would probably have a great one with like pre-made stuff, but like I'd be sad if I couldn't freeform make cool like stories and stuff.
I mean, yeah, for sure. I just, again, I don't know about the bond system, but you could just do that with a board game.
You could.
There's literally nothing else that the TTRPG aspect adds to it, really. Other than you can make up your own skills for your pilot, I suppose.
I mean, it's a TTRPG in the fact you're like leveling up your mech with its leveling system.
But you could do that with board games.
You could. I think what they have right now is more suited for a tabletop game. But I want them to. I would have preferred if they just made the pilots have a presence in the game. Instead of what it is of like when we're not in the mech, we're kind of in a free flow roleplay state. I can fuck with that if the GM is right.
Yeah.
But it's not like the fun I could have in it if like it's not the same as like Pathfinder where I can utilize a lot of my cool stuff in narrative like situations.
Well, yeah, because like so the reason why the idea of the D&D style TTRPG is so successful is because it allows players to be creative in ways that you just can't with a lot of other games. Like, want to get on top of a building? You got skills, you got abilities, you got spells, you got talents, all that kind of stuff. You want to convince an NPC to do something for you? You got different skills or abilities. It's not just a persuasion check. In Pathfinder specifically, you have talents orientated around that. And in both D&D and Pathfinder, you got spells orientated around that. Like, you can get magic items that improve non-combat abilities like persuasion. You have an amulet of charming or something like that. You can take consumables that can give your characters momentary abilities. Like, one of the reasons why I love Alchemist is because I love just handing my friends drugs when they want to do something and they get better at the thing that they were just about to do, you know?
Based.
Eventually I can take one of my alchemical potions and then get telepathy to plan things with people, you know? That's something that's not necessarily combat related and has a lot of different uses. And that's another part of it as well. Items are really, really big. You can find magic items and you can do all that kind of stuff. And I'll make a special mention, I do know there are unique pieces of equipment in Lancer that are gained specifically through the bond system. So I do know that there are some bits you can add to your mechs with the bond system through that kind of stuff. But in Lancer, when it comes to what your pilot is doing outside of your mech, you just have a skill that you just had to make a name for randomly, by the way, or use one of their defaults to make anything happen, right? There's no talents orientated around it. All that stuff just goes directly to the mechs. So, you know, it's hard to be creative, mechanically speaking, when you have a game that doesn't offer you a lot of non-combat options in general. And so D&D is fun because you get combat abilities, but you can have non-combat abilities. And sure, players like to stock themselves up on combat abilities because let's be real here. Combat is fun. Like, Lancer is really, really fun because the combat is really cool, and I love making new mechs. I need to do mech builds. I've been meaning to, and I just haven't.
You'll have a good option for it when the video game drops.
True.
Like, to even demo it. It's just... It is also the conversely, I think, the effect of what Lancer is as it's designed, with its lack of fun abilities, like you're talking about, where because there's just not anything mechanically crazy you can do, it, which feels like it's also the intention of the game, it just kind of incentivizes you as a group and as a GM to just have your guys in the mech constantly. Like, you have little short moments maybe, but like, you're just kind of jumping each session. You're like, all right, we have a little bit of setup. Boom, you're in your mech. Boom, you're fighting, which does rule. I do think like it would be more fun for a longer game if the GM was goated, or more realistically, I'd rather have like a nice 10, 15 sessioner, but it's really just build experimentation. We're just having fun with cool combats.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, a good GM can make any game work, right? Good GMs make D&D work.
Exactly.
And to be fair, when we had our short campaign, we had a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
We had some fun memes. You know, Space Robert Downey Jr. was one of them.
My highlights are of like the funny moments, but then they're largely like parts I remember are the combats, because like they were really fun combats. It's just that's kind of what sticks with you, and like it's why I'm happy that they're sticking to their design guns, because I like playing things that I think are inherently somebody's vision, but I think the vision would be cooler if I melded it with another game I like.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not demanding Lancer change the way that I want. Like, I can both dislike how it's designed, or at least that part of it is designed, and still respect their choice to design it that way. You know,
yeah,
it's
my biggest piece of critique. Like, I feel the same way. It'd be a game where I'd be like, oh, this would be a lot cooler. I understand why. I would not have made that same decision, but like, fair enough, I guess. It's always like my vibe of it.
Yeah. I want games that let me pick things that my character can do outside of combat, because in all honesty, it typically just makes my character more interesting 9 times out of 10. Like, maybe not if it's something very basic, like slight stat boost increase, like charming, get +1 on your persuasion checks. That's not very interesting. But like, if you had feats or abilities that actually affected like how your character, maybe you're really good at scaling walls, you know, like being able to climb a wall is a mobility thing, which is good in combat, but is also really, really good out of combat. You know, that's something I really like to have. Or things that make it where NPCs want to do things for me, or it's easier for me to convince NPCs to do things. Or, you know, even better, things that let me read an NPC's mind, even barely, you know. Heck, one of the systems I really like in Pathfinder is the recall knowledge system and how much actually goes into the recall knowledge system, both in combat and out of combat. And I genuinely think that D&D and the idea of D&D introduce a lot of people to a variety of things, right? Because I feel like a lot of people who make interesting characters in D&D just like to make characters who can do really weird, funny things, right? And that's great. And I think that's really, really fun. And that's kind of the enjoyment of tabletop. And I just hope that with content creators talking more about other games and with other games really starting to make their way into the scene, like I'm going to tell you right now, the Cosmere RPG is really cool. If the beta was any indication, it's going to be really, really cool because there's so many things that you can do through the system in general to make your character really unique in the things you're capable of and to give you some very strong choices because the game isn't just a combat simulator. The setting isn't just a combat simulator. I'm going to make a no monk who razzle dazzles you with a flashbang. Yeah. I mean, like, Pathfinder, too. That's one of the things I love in Pathfinder. I love the variety of weird, interesting things you can do in Pathfinder. Is my Archivist build really all that good? It's one of my favorite builds I've designed for Pathfinder, where you take a Thaumaturge, you do some multi-class into Magus, and you take the Shielded Tome feat, and the later one that lets you like add a special shield to your tome. No, because honestly, what I could have done is just use a shield and not a tome.
Saved you a feat, but you would look less cool.
But it would be less cool because then I couldn't use my tome implement from Thaumaturge.
It's like a very specific cool vibe because it's the thing that's giving people, I think the idea they get when they hear raised tome is an option. Like, ah, oh, shit, I want to use that. How could I use it? It's like, all right, well, here's a great way you can.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking about this while you were explaining everything. Is it just me? Is this just like crack pipe theory? With like the D&D getting massively big and people making their own indie games, very much inspired by just getting into tabletop games, I think we're moving away from this trend more recently, especially with the Cosmere. It's good evidence about this. Do you feel like games that popped up around the heyday of D&D are kind of do just feel like a half sectioned out of a tabletop game? Because you think of like the embodiment of a D&D game with your exploration, your roleplay, and your combat, where people ran like home games and were like, I prefer the combat. Let me make my own little indie game, and it's like combat, roleplay, exploration rules, basically nothing. Then you can jump to a different game and be like, roleplay rules? Insane. Combat rules? A little lesser. Like, it feels like there's a lot of indie tabletop that are just kind of sections of the tabletop experience, laser focused on one type of thing. With like D&D is kind of assumed to be the default tabletop campaign experience.
I'm sure there is. And hey, Cam, that's a thing you can do by porting Monk to Starfinder Lamau. You could do it just in Pathfinder too, I believe. I mean, maybe not with an actual flashbang, but maybe you could actually just be an alchemist. So, you could still do it. But no, so as far as that is concerned, from everything I've seen from games in general, I don't really think so. But what I do think is the thing that probably happened more is a lot of games tried to do what tabletop has been trying to do for ages, which is make combat faster. And so they find all kinds of ways to like simplify combat in some very simple ways. And so it can make the game feel very combat orientated when a lot of the focus was like, hey, I want to do this, but I want combat to be so much faster. And so you have a bunch of rules based on that. And then when you're thinking about like the actual narrative part, it's like, oh, well, I mean, we're just going to tell the story. This is what we did anyway, you know?
I guess it also can make some sense if you're an indie dev, smaller team, less time. It's probably easier to just be like, let's make a smaller scoped game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what Iron said. Yeah, it's quite possible for sure. And especially if you're trying to produce something that people will buy, then yeah. And also, I think a lot of people just don't like the idea of designing a whole tabletop. They just like designing a part of a tabletop that they really like, that they can steal from games, you know? Because, like, I'm designing a tabletop currently, and I have definitely not been laser focused on one particular part. I've been trying to make many different parts of the overall experience good. Like, there is combat in the game, yes, but there's also, like, skills and exploration are a massive part of the system, and roleplay is potentially a really big part of the system. There's no way that the game directly, I guess it kind of can reward your actual roleplay benefits, but it gives you a lot of things to roleplay with. But you know what they say, leading a horse to water and all that. So roleplaying is something that people have to actively engage in. You can't really force players to engage in it, because they're just going to, if they're not interested in doing it, they're going to do just the bare minimum to get the game benefits for what role-playing is asking of them, you know? So,
yeah.
Pathfinder is so much easier to play on Foundry with partial automation. That is actually, I think, a big thing of tabletops now, especially, is that a lot more games, I think, can exist now for a wider audience, because we do have more general automation coming out for games, so that people don't have to worry about the math for things, because the game just does it for you. Some people hate this idea because they think they're just making games video gamey. I disagree. I think they're just making it where it's a lot easier to do a thing that you were already going to do, you know? Go ahead.
I have never felt a tangible difference between rolling a virtual dice and rolling a real one. Like, I'll be honest. I view it as a vessel for a random number generator. So, like, it's always been hard for me to be like, it's the pen and paper feel of it. And, like, I prefer a paper sheet. But, like, that's just because I think it's easier to edit than a PDF. I don't give a shit if I roll dice. I would live happy with a single set of dice.
I like rolling dice. I like dice towers, and I like all that jazz, but I am not upset about doing most of it through digital nowadays, especially with Foundry, because you can just do dice so nice and make your dice whatever you want. So that's kind of
exactly fun. Like, it is just a great accessibility tool in that way of, it's just going to open it up to more people. And I'm excited for, as VTTs develop with like the new project with the Foundry devs, I think it's a genuine step into like getting a lot more people into stuff. The big hurdle is just basically one person has to become an expert in the system.
Yeah.
But it works. It feels good to do. The more VTTs kind of video gamify a tabletop game, I just get more drawn in. Yeah. So I like having that thing taken off of me. I don't forget my abilities and items as much. It's just fun. And like, the one I always point at like example of this is just anyone who's played the Rogue Trader CRPG, go read the core book. The core book of that game is so much simpler, and because all the abilities are like so simple and streamlined in the tabletop game. And then the CRPG took the opposite and was like, well, it's a video game, like we'll handle all the crazy math for you. And now you get to do some absolutely bonkers build shit. Because there's a lot of complex math. You don't need to roll the dice and count up yourself. Like, that's the benefit. You can make really fun, complicated games really easy for people to do. Because they're like, they see all the math and you're just like, don't worry, just press this button. It spits out the answer and it's happy. It's great.
Yeah. Well, and it cuts a lot of the chaff, like, is it really that much more fun to be like, all right, I'm going to cast a fireball. Let me get my fireball template out and kind of see if I can angle it so I can look at all the characters just right underneath it? Or is it better to just have a little thing, just drag your mouse and you have an area around your mouse to indicate like where your fireball can hit? Like,
Yeah.
It's, there's this idea a lot of grognards have that the more gamified tabletops become, the more just video games they are and the less tabletop they are. And then when you ask them, okay, in what ways, they're like, I don't want the game to play itself for me. I want to do the things. And it's like, so you want to have all the hassle of running this, right? And they're like, yeah. And like, what's the difference if it's just a digital thing that just makes it easier? It's just like, because then it removes a lot of the magic. Like, their examples are, it's just not their experience that they enjoy with it. They have no actual reason to dislike it other than the fact they don't like it aesthetically or tactilely, maybe.
Yeah.
And
it's a way, if you've learned to play it for so long, you've done it since you're a kid, and you have a preference, fair enough. In 30 years, when we're all playing tabletop games with our VR headsets, and we're going into a big virtual map made, and we're fighting with just our bodies and we're standing, I might like it less, because that's just a lot of effort. But and then I'll be called a grognard, a neo grognard or whatever in the future. It's just, that's how time goes. Your preference. And the difference is you can look at something new and be like, it's probably not my speed. I'm gonna stick it to the way I do it. That's perfectly fine. Problem is just when you're annoying about it, which is a big problem with grognards.
Well, and it's just like, the core fundamentals of what tabletop is versus isn't is just freedom, right? So as long as I can do whatever I want for whatever reason, as long as we could have moments like Ass Blaster in our future games, there's really no way of gamifying that part out of it, right? Like, when you play an actual video game, yes, you can't do a lot of the things you can in tabletop because they just don't exist, But as long as I still can roll a die freely without a specific prompt, then you can just do literally whatever, like, for real. If someone's just like, I want to target that creature's asshole, and the GM's like, all right, roll, that's the story. No VTT is going to animate that. Maybe they will. Maybe if you got some sickos out there. But no VT
absolute freaks
is going to actually animate a thing like that. Or no game is going to actually include that as a generalized mechanic. Because why would they? That sounds like a lot of work for no reason. When literally all you have to do is just like, okay, player wants to hit a thing. Let's just let them roll to hit the thing.
It's a very specific vibe in the balance that I hope will never actually be an issue, because I like I think it's more fun to video gamify your tabletop games, and vice versa. I like video games trying to be tabletop games. I think it's really fun. The difference of the crossover is just, it's exactly that freedom. Because I've been playing Cyberpunk again. It's just fantastic time. I need to just do the DLC. But the recent updates have added a bunch of immersive options, and there are mods doing even harder, to where you can now hang out in a bar, drink, chat with the other characters in the game. Those are mods that do that last part. And also they added something they promised in E3 and never was in the game. They added metro stations, so you can go take a subway around Night City. I would never do it, and I never have in this video game, because it's tactically the same thing as fast traveling. But if I was playing the Cyberpunk tabletop game, like Cyberpunk Red or something, I'd be more willing, because there's roleplay encounters. I can't roleplay in a video game metro station, because they're not going to write out every permutation of human activity and dialogue that you can go through. Anything that would happen would be a scripted event, and and all these animations happen once. There's the fundamental difference that tabletop will always have, even if it has all these funny video game bells and whistles.
Yeah, as long as I can just talk to characters, like actually talk to them, I'll be happy. That's just the thing. And to be honest, that's mostly ever going to be on the GM. And I kind of agree. Oh man, the newish school of D20 thought in Pathfinder circles is, bro, I want to play a game, versus OSR people still want to improvise stuff and have GMs adjudicate. I mean, it's more of Pathfinder players just want the thing they do to be in the game and not have to give a lot of work to the DM. The OSR people are just imagining the idea that we can't make up things anymore, which is ironic.
There's a part of me that I'm viewing it in this direction. I'm a person who has a difficulty putting stock into a thing I view as arbitrary, where I am just really big in that concept of like, I just want you to have a reason why you want this thing done this way. I want you to have a reason why you care. But if you tell me just do it, or because it's always been that way, that's when I get annoyed, and I'm like, well, now the blocker's up. I can't respect this thing because your reason to do it is arbitrary. And I think there's a lot of people who have that idea. And then it depends on what your perspective on rules are. Because sometimes I do view a rule when it pops up, I'm like, that feels very arbitrary. Like, what is the actual purpose of this? How does this enhance the game in any way? And then there are other times where someone's like, oh, the rule's like this because I'm ruling on it right now. And it's like, well, is that based on anything? Like, what's your reason for doing this? And a lot of times I do sympathize a lot with the OSR types, because I ran games a bit like this, where I would allow my players to do shit outside the box because D&D didn't have it, granted. And then I would make a ruling, but tell them, hey, if you ever try to do this again, hold me to it. I want to be consistent. And I think there's a difference between, having a different ruling every time and trying to stay consistent with your game, and having to do it out of necessity. I wonder if that is a factor. I wonder if there are people that view the rules as a goalie stopping them from having fun. That seems to be the case when I talk to people about it. I've landed a lot harder in the case of I want a game to be there, because I think it just allows people to have more fun and do more with their experience. But that's just the vibe I really get from people when I've debated about Pathfinder, why I like it. It seems like people might view a lot of rules just arbitrary, and it should be hand-waved by the GM.
Yeah, and well, it's the reason why a lot of people love D&D, right? They love D&D because it's broken, because they have to make new and fun ideas. They wouldn't have the same games they have been having if their DM had stuff to work off of. It's because it had to force them to be inventive and unique and all that kind of stuff like that. And again, it's the same conversation as the leading a horse to a water thing, where just because Pathfinder has an extensive books of magic items doesn't mean a GM can't make a new item. It's pretty easy to do, honestly. Just because Pathfinder's a complete game doesn't mean you can't just add new things because you want to. It's ludicrous to think the idea that because a rule exists, I can't have fun with it, is stopping anyone from having fun. The only reason why some of those people think that way is because they can't do a broken mechanic over and over and over to just break the game to their favor. Like the whole meteor thing from D&D of just summoning cows in the air and dropping them on people, It's just why is it fun? Because it lets me do more damage for less high spell slots, right? But what you're actually saying is, I want a broken spell, GM. Give me a broken spell. a lot of these people who don't like how rules get in the way are the same people who get upset when their broken logic they give to you for why something should happen gets refuted because what they think is supposed to happen doesn't happen that way in real life, you know? Like, it's like, I want to shoot the chandelier down so it falls down and kills all the bad guys. And the GM's like, all right, well, I'll let you shoot the chandelier down, but they're going to get a reflex saving throw to see if they don't get hit by it because, you know, it doesn't just immediately hit the ground. People are going to see it drop and try to get out of the way, right? But the players are going to be upset.
At least a little bit of noise and heads up it's happening to dodge.
You know, it's just players want the kinds of people, right? Who are these people? Who are these people who want this thing, don't want this thing? I will talk to them and we can get down to the bottom of it. But right now, these are just hypothetical people who want games like this or not like this or whatever. Like,
yeah,
it's at the end of the day, you just have to address what a game offers versus what it doesn't offer and not make hypotheticals. I ran into a player who argued with me why mend can't be used to close wounds or heal bones.
Yeah, that one was dumb. Right. That was a very dumb point. It was like, because it's one of those things that sounds good for a few seconds, which I'm pretty sure I said, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then thought about it for more. I'm like, no, wait, it doesn't. That does not make any sense. Because like, it sounds good. And then you realize how quickly it falls apart of like the reasoning. And in reality, you just want like healing word and cure wounds without having it. I mean, this is the thing that it's also jumping for, because I like to just chat with people when I can in my community around like tabletop games. I will just talk about like tabletop, especially when they're talking about D&D, because I like hearing why they like a game I don't like. And there are really just, it feels like there's two types. And I landed one of these a lot harder, where there are the types you're describing, where what they really want is they want their class able to do anything.
Yeah.
I know my class is like not a healer, but I want to use this cantrip like a healer. I know I'm like maybe a martial character with bow and arrow, but I want a fireball, so that might let me insta kill everyone. So let me shoot the chandelier. They want to be able to talk their way into any class effect. And there's the other type where I've talked to these people as well, where the idea to them is a lot harder in that idea of, I like when the GM can arbitrate a thing. Like, I've outsmarted the GM in a moment. They're like, okay, that's not allowed. Like, your logic, though, is fun. I think this is cool. Let's run it. You get to do this one time. Because for myself and for other people that I've ran games for, the idea of repeatedly exploiting a thing like this is a little alien. Like, I've been told that for a lot of ideas I've had. I've talked to Q about this a lot, where he'll tell me a thing. He's like, oh, that'd be broken if we did it like this, or I might have to alter that. And my immediate thought is, oh shit, I was going to do this as a one-off thing. That's broken. I had no connection of that. That's not something I would exploit. I've had to arbitrate rules, especially because my friends came up with a really cool idea, and then he was outwardly like, I'm going to exploit this, and I'm like, okay, I will let you do this once. That's my ruling here, because you understand this is why this shit's broken. You can't do this. It feels like there's the jump of like, the first type of person who I think just wants a broken thing, I feel like they would really like a rules heavy game. I think they would like having that many toys to play with. I feel like the other type of just, they want the fun idea. They want the moment where they can kind of break the rules a little bit, have a cool moment, and that's like a highlight of their day. That feels a lot more true to what the OSR wants to be.
Yeah.
It wants to be a very free roleplay experience and have those like super sick moments, because those are the moments you remember.
Yeah. And to be fair though, so you said something interesting. You said, well, I would never exploit it like that. It's not about the intent to exploit. It's more of, wouldn't it be frustrating if a thing you've done before didn't work a second time for an arbitrary
100%.
reason? That's what it is.
100%.
So that's the reason why GMs need to make sure they don't set bad precedents by letting you break the game with things that are not situational, right? It's just like, It's like, why can't I do this thing that I can find in 90% of situations to do this broken thing or whatever? Like, it's a lot easier to say no the first time than it is the second time. And that's why you have to be careful when it comes to letting players do things. I've done this plenty of times. There's been tons of times where players wanted to do a thing, like teleport behind the enemy, and then the enemy just happens to know where they are because, like, yes, I get it. I get the story idea. You teleport behind them, and this is not even talking about your recent character, Alex. This has happened before.
Yeah.
And they don't know where you are because you just suddenly vanished, and how would they know they're behind you? But the problem is you're making an ability that is then not only just teleportation, which is very powerful for repositioning purposes and all that, mechanically speaking, but also gives you some advantage to hurt someone in tandem. That's not what the spell does. It's not its intended effect. Why can't you just do this every single time? So doing it just this one time makes no sense, because it should make sense every time, if otherwise. So
yeah, that's always the bit where I put the line in the sand. I think there is always that fundamental difference of, hey, let me misread a spell real quick. Like, this should be the norm. Because even from that perspective, I kind of lean more towards, I look at that and I'm like, oh yeah, 100%. That's essentially like, hey, I have a 1-turn invisibility. Like, I have all this, and it's easily explained of like, oh yeah, man, your teleport, like they might not know where you are for a second, but then they hear a displacement of air behind them. Like, that's teleports are noisy,
or
it
whatever.
makes sense. Yeah, it always makes sense to like have that. The bit I always think about is moments where I had a moment in this one game I was doing, a bit fun, like more modern D&D thing. They were in an arena, they were fighting a big scary monster, and one of the things someone did is they had satchel charges, just essentially C4, and after they hurt this big pillar, they were like, oh, satchel charge on the pillar, I want to try to knock it in a way where this big ass pillar lands on this guy. And it's like, okay, there's no rule for that, and like let's run that. Let's just 100% do that. I like the idea too much. You're getting too hyped about it. Like, that's sick. And then if a moment is a little too broken, and I always had that tendency of just upfront communicating, because it goes wrong if you don't do it like this, where you're like, okay, this is busted. I want you to understand why I cannot say yes to this later, but that sounds funny. Let's roll it. Like, let's do it this one time. Because I always felt so awful for someone coming, like, cooking up a thing in a turn, telling it to me, and then me being like, that, you cannot do that. I always felt horrible.
Yeah.
And that was my compromise for myself. But it's the balance I run, man, where I'm like, there are two wolves inside of me. There's the wolf that is like, rules are arbitrary, fuck it, let's just tell a story, we're friends here. And the other part of me is like, no, but you understand game design and respect a rules-heavy experience, because there's legit reasons it has to be this way.
Yeah.
And it's more fun.
Because breaking rules can cheapen an experience. So you have to
100%.
It's kind of like a monetary thing, where you have to understand that the more you bust your game up, the cheaper it becomes overall. It's it's something that people have a hard time with, and as well, it doesn't matter who's right if people feel bad, because it's what has happened to me more often than not running as a GM is a player thinks they have a really good idea, but it doesn't work the way they want it to because they didn't consider a thing, or physics don't work that way. And I'm not even using that in like the overall sense, because we're playing a fantasy setting. It's more of just like it's more of like those situations where the kind of reaction they're looking for just wouldn't happen normally in a standard situation, but they think it would, because it's like a good example, you're playing in a game like Call of Cthulhu or whatever, and they're like, hey, can I shoot their car and just make it explode? It's just like, You're telling me right now that all you need to do is just shoot someone's car to have it explode. That's what you want in this moment, right? Like, I get the movie idea you're thinking of, but let's think of the repercussions of this, shall we? So can they just not shoot your vehicle and cause it to explode and kill you all? Can you just shoot every bad guy's car and just cause it to instantly explode? Like, that's just not how physics work. You don't shoot a car and it just explodes. Even if you shoot the gas tank, that's just not what happens.
There, actually, funnily enough, there is I found this through Red Letter Media, that there's some weird gun guy. He tested that theory out on this weird VHS tape, and like it just requires a gun that can penetrate and more firepower, because like there's areas around like where the gas is handled, where you shoot it, and if there is enough penetration and enough raw firepower with like, so a belt-fed gun, that works better. In the movies, they're always using a rinky-dink pistol. You're not going to do that with a 9mm. And more likely, if you're not lucky, you're going to just stall the engine. Like, that's the thing that's more likely. And where like that idea is dumb, there's the situational idea where you're like, oh shit, GM, it's perfectly positioned. My character is an expert mechanic. I work with car parts all the time. For this thing, I have this big ass fucking sniper rifle. Could I Hail Mary try to shoot the gas tank like through the car? And you're like, this is gonna be tough. Like, let's do the multiple rolls. And, like, that's how an idea could break the rules a bit and be sick. It requires, thought, situation, and engagement all around. Like, that feels more earned.
Yeah.
But that I've heard versions of that question too. I understand 100%. It is a goofy question. It's always like that next step. I think that point of they didn't think it out and it wouldn't do the thing they think it would do.
Yeah. And so a lot of the ideas and the questions about like this whole grognards just wanting the game to be completely arbitrated by the GM and not having excessive rules or not being overly video gamified, or people who just hate rules. They just want to play a game and just let imaginations go. Like, the number one thing this all boils down to isn't the game experience, it's their experience with the game, and very typically how their GM handled this kind of situation. Because for every one of these situations that people talk about the really cool things they got to do that broke the game and blah 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 blah, there's been another game where a GM said no and they got upset about it. Like, this experience with the grognards and everything like that, there's been tons of those kinds of games where their GM didn't know what to do and just told them no, or didn't do anything interesting with it. Like, the fun of a TTRPG is, you can just make it up if it makes sense and if it is fun in the moment. But like, I run my games pretty to the letter with some flexibility here and there. The players want to do things. And what generally ends up happening is when the things happen, when the players do something genuinely good or interesting, they get to do it. And that's really cool and really awesome. But they don't get to do it all the time. So I don't cheapen those moments by just letting my players have free reign. And you get that by just having a game that has very structured rules and isn't so flippy dippy about it. Because in all honesty, it gets really boring. Like, one of the reasons why I didn't enjoy our experience with Blades in the Dark that much was literally most checks, a character could use any skill for any kind of check. There wasn't really a particular reason why a character was, any more different than others. Monster of the Week was very similar. Like, there's a lot of situations where you either had this stat or you didn't have this stat. And there were a lot of different skills and abilities that could just let you use your good stat for another thing anyway, and thus making the stat differences more meaningless. And it's not fun. It's more fun when the players actually do something interesting, because it is meaningful to have that. Now, I'm not saying be a super stickler and make nothing ever happen so that one small good thing that happens players really enjoy. It's not worth it if you play a game for 5 years and the players can name on one hand the number of times they had fun. But
Yeah, that's bad.
but you know, it's important to let your players work within the structure of the game until they earns the ability to step out of it. Because
Yeah.
then you get to do actually cool things that are actually meaningful, not just gimmies. But
And it always will depend, I think, on the level of buy-in. Where
yeah,
there are people with, I mean, I'm kind of like this way, of a much lower buy-in level where I can be satisfied with a, like, because I didn't have that issue with Blades in the Dark or Monster of the Week, but I look at it and I'm like, oh yeah, these are objective, I think, issues with this game and objective reasons why doing a really, really long campaign in either of these is a weaker experience. I can enjoy myself just as fine, but it's the level of buy-in everybody has.
well,
And
whenever we consider these things as well, we think about the general experience and not our individual experience. I don't tell people a class is good or bad based on my own preferences. I tell them what I think generally based on how the games work. So, you know, Alex not having the same problems is completely fine, but he's smart enough to understand that there is objective reasons why these things can diminish, like, uniqueness, for instance, even though he enjoys the experience.
I would never like shit on something or someone be like, oh no, it's this way or the highway. It's a bad game because I don't like this thing. A lot of times I think it's better to look at a thing, and there's so many moments where you can logically be like, I understand why this is popular. I understand why it's enjoyed, or this movie is objectively well made. It's really good objectively. Subjectively, I don't care for it because it's not my taste. Like,
Yeah.
those are always like two different things. And it's important to take stock in that. And it's only when you declaratively state a subjective opinion that a lot of really bad disagreements will occur.
Yeah. So, kind of got way off topic for today's chat.
A bit, yeah.
To be fair, it's interesting. I think it's interesting to
Yeah.
talk about these fundamental things because it feels like it's just a thing a lot of people ignore, but that's just because of internet bias. I'm sure a lot of people feel and understand the same way about things. And I can always see clear cuts of internet bias whenever, like, my tier list video for the Pathfinder classes, for instance. I can tell people who think more thoroughly through the grand scheme of things versus people who have a very subjective, very particular view on a thing. And it's interesting. It's funny. It doesn't make their experiences any less viable or not, but it doesn't mean that their opinion should be taken into consideration on how a game should overall be designed. Like, can a game's design get in the way of fun? Yes, I agree. I think there are some ways a game can be a little too structured, a little too inflexible. I think Pathfinder 2E has a general problem with this when there are some feats that are somewhat recreatable through player actions, for instance. But the game doesn't tell you can't do that necessarily.
Yeah, it's why I really liked our interview where that was directly said as the intent, which I will now shout that to the heavens to people of like, no, it's a mean to make it easier. You can view a feat doing the action as a framework. Having the feat means it's easily repeatable. Like, that is the intent. I think it should be stated. I disagree because I think we said that it was brought up and they were like, nah, it's not really our position on it. I think they should state it if that is the intent. I think it'll do only better things for people.
Yeah. I think it's hard Because if they do that, it sounds like almost they're giving permission for people to use feats without having the feats or meeting the prerequisites for it, and that's not their intent.
Yeah, and it kind of makes it feel like, oh, what's the point of even getting a feat if I can do all these things?
Yeah.
I just, if anything, I think having it stated that the intent of feats are to inspire you of actions you can take, and like it, because that's what it sounded like their point was, and the intent of the feats are, it is inspiration for the cool cinematic stuff, not to stop you from doing cool cinematic stuff on your own. And it should be that thing of like, just because it's a feat doesn't mean you don't have permission to do it within reason. You are not going to be as good at it as a person with a feat. That feels a little more limited.
But if they say that, then people start demanding that they make rules for how it works if you don't have a feat but try to do it anyway. Like, what's the structure for that? So, it's
a tough battle. It'd have to be worded very specifically.
There's not a good way to word it, because that's the thing, right? It's like giving players an inch and they'll take a mile. You have to be careful where you give your inches, right? Giggity. It's something where, unfortunately, they just have to bank on the goodwill of players and GMs, because their word, it's like they can't make micro adjustments from their position because their words have too much sway and too much power. So saying one way or the other will sway it way further than they intend to. So they just kind of got to base it on the idea of it's a game, like rule 0. The GM gets final say in what happens. So if you want to do a thing and the GM says yes, then you can. It's kind of already in the game technically by that standard. But it's hard in a TTRPG especially, because you to some degree as a designer, especially, like, I know this especially because of the game I'm designing currently, you have to accept that the players are going to have some responsibility for how they use your game or not, and go based off of that. Because if you have a true rules lawyer-esque DM who doesn't let you wiggle outside of the rules at all, that also diminishes what makes roleplay, what makes tabletop. So, but there's nothing you can do about it. That feels more video game
than anything else.
Yeah.
Pure video games, you have a bunch of constraints you can never wiggle outside of.
So, like, the expectation is this is the type of game we're playing. You're expected to allow your players to do things. If it kind of breaks the rules, you just give them some rough framework for doing so. And, like, every GM who sees a player, every good GM you see, or like a lot of these developers who see a player do a thing that they shouldn't be able to do normally, will be like, all right, I'll let you do that, but here's a really hard check based on what I think is fair for this situation. And that's the basic level of arbitration generally needed in tabletop. But, like, I agree, it would be better if they had more of a declared intent, but then you just bring the types of people out who would abuse that, and that's not what they want. So it's hard.
It doesn't sound like there's a right answer to it.
No.
I at least like that it was stated, because I think it changes how I view feats. Because I view them as like pure raw abilities you gain access to. The idea that they are like that level, they are inspiration for cool cinematic moments, and it's not stopping you from doing it, but these can also be viewed as a framework for a type of action, I think is a great perspective to hold. And because it's our group and we're all just good natured and good faith about things, it's not something we try to abuse. It's something we try to do to look cool, role play, and extend narratively to each other.
Yeah. And, like, every good GM tries to arbitrate the best for their group. And so, like, the best advice is just play with people you enjoy playing games with, period. There's not really a better way or worse way to make a game work for your group. It's just play with people you enjoy with. You'll typically have fun. If you don't have fun, Maybe the game just doesn't work with y'all's sensibilities, or maybe your GM just had an off day. Who knows? But like, game development is always very hard in that respect. And and to close off the point of the entire chat today, before we end, yeah, I think D&D is on its way out, or well, out's not the best way to put it. I think D&D is slowly fading into the background of tabletop. It's always going to be there. It's like a mountain, you know, everything is going to be compared and contrasted, and nothing's ever going to kind of reach its same heights. But what we want to enjoy and the kinds of things we want to enjoy, I think, are going to get a lot more exposure because it's so far in the background now, more than it was before. And we need content creators to make content on other games, and they're starting to, and that's good. So, you know, hopefully a year from now we'll be talking about some other games that are like really coming out into the market. Maybe the Cosmere RPG is really, really huge. I'm very excited for that, and hopefully I'll be making some more videos soon. But that's gonna be it for us today. Alex, you want to leave us off with anything before we head out?
Yeah, I make lore YouTube videos over on my channel, Glue Boy. I've been on a recent World of Darkness kick, so if you want some fun lore on that, I made a video recently on the Baba Yaga in Vampire the Masquerade. She's very fun. And I got a video cooking going over all the World War II lore in World of Darkness, because it's a wild time. Bunch of ghosts, bunch of werewolves, bunch of vampires kicking around. And it's done surprisingly well and with a lot of sensitivity, which I was really surprised to keep encountering. So yeah, it'll be fun. That video, it'll probably take a little longer because I got random things popping up extending when I can have my deadline for filming it. So stay tuned for that. It'll probably be here next month.
Yeah, speaking of next month, I should have some videos towards the end of next month coming out. Got some stuff on embargo, which is really cool, and I hope y'all enjoy it. I'm looking forward to making content again. It's definitely not going to be at the same rate that I've ever done it before, but it will be something. I'm going to try to get at least one video a week out. I think I can manage that much. Hopefully it'll be more in the future, but for now, just with the baby and the fact that I'm busy all the time with it, that's just how life is. Tabletop is going through some changes right now. It's crazy. I'm very excited to see what the future holds. You know, will Daggerheart really explode onto the scene? Will Cosmere explode onto the scene? Will people just stop talking about D&D? Like, I think we're in for some very interesting times in the tabletop scene, and with Gen Con coming out here soon, and a lot of other like summer conventions for gaming in general, I do think we're also going to hear some news on some other really cool games that are in production at the moment, and that will be sick. But that's going to be it for us. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll go ahead and say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.